Please. Okay. Well, welcome everyone to our Grey County Public Planning meeting of November 7th of this year. I'll call the meeting to order. As a reminder, this meeting is being held electronically and live streamed on the county's website. Proper notice for today's meeting was given in accordance with the county's procedural bylaw and Planning Act. For any questions following today's meeting, please contact planning@grey.ca, or you can call 548-877-0919 for assistance. Comments are still being accepted after today's meeting. Madam Deputy Clerk, would you please take the roll call, please?
Through you, Mr. Warden. We are joined this afternoon by Councillors McKay, Matrosovs, Nielsen, Evany, Carlton, and oops, sorry, my list moved on me. I believe those are the members of County Council who have joined us this afternoon.
Very good. Thank you, Sarah. Is there any declaration of interest amongst the members present today regarding any item on today's agenda? Not hearing one. If one should arise, you can declare it at any time. Please be advised that the purpose of the public meeting is to obtain input from the public. In sharing any comments today, you do not have to be in support of or in opposition to Official Plan Amendment number 23. Your comments may simply be questions to help you better understand the proposed amendment. Any material submitted or shared will become part of the public record. First, we'll hear a presentation from our staff. Following the presentation, members of the public who have registered to participate will be called upon to speak. Following public comments, staff may respond to questions of clarification from members of the public or County Council. Staff and council members are here to receive comments from the public and are not here to debate the matter. Please be advised that no decision is being considered as part of today's agenda. The meeting is strictly intended to receive comments and questions from the public. The county's planning staff will prepare a report for consideration at a future meeting of the County Council that will consider the submissions made regarding this matter. To request notice of that decision or notice of any further meetings, please send a written request to planning@grey.ca if you have not already done so. Excuse me. I'll now invite the county's Director of Planning, Scott Taylor, to give his presentation, which will include a summary of the written comments received today. Scott, welcome. The floor is yours, sir.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Warden, and good afternoon, Warden and members of County Council and all those that might be tuning in today to watch the meeting. I'm just going to share my screen here with a brief presentation. Could somebody just give me a head nod that you can see that presentation okay? Great. Thank you, Mr. Warden. So for those of you that might not have been to a public meeting for a while, or if this is your first public meeting, there are a few legal requirements that we just go through at the early part of the public meeting. As the warden noted, we did give notice of this public meeting in accordance with the Planning Act. In this case, because it's a county-wide amendment, there were ads placed in local newspapers. There was materials posted on the county website, and there was a digital circulation to the agencies and public bodies, which the Planning Act requires that we circulate to. All of the information regarding this public meeting can be found on the county's website at www.grey.ca. As the warden mentioned, if you wish to be notified of the decision of Official Plan Amendment number 23, you can request as such in writing, either to the mailing address at 595 9th Avenue East, Owen Sound, Ontario, N4K3E3, or via email at planning@grey.ca. There's a few more legal requirements we go through here. If a person or public body would otherwise have the ability to appeal the decision of the County of Grey in reference to Official Plan Amendment number 23 to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the county before the Official Plan Amendment is adopted, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. Similarly, if you don't submit written comments or make verbal comments at the public meeting, you may not be added to an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal, unless in the opinion of the tribunal, there's reasonable grounds to do so. As the warden mentioned, if there's any comments or questions from the public today, all those are going to go through the warden, and we do ask that you give your name and address for the record, because that's something we track in our public record in that regard. With respect to the specifics of official plan amendment number 23, the county's official plan Recolor Gray was approved approximately 5 years ago. So it was approved in June of 2019. There have been amendments to the county official plan since then, both from private individuals as well as some county-initiated amendments. And county staff and municipal staff and developers now have 5 years of working within the plan. And as you begin to work with the plan, you start to realize what's working very well and some of those policies that might cause confusion and require some further clarification. In this case specifically, there's some policies in the rural designation that have caused questions, and the main purpose of official plan amendment number 23 is to clarify some of those policies that have been causing confusion over the past 5 years. At this stage, there's no changes proposed to the county's mapping. It's just the rural policies, and we are looking at some of the permitted use policies in the rural designation, the development criteria policies, as well as some definitions and one small clarification in the agricultural designation. We'll go over that in further detail in just a second here. With respect to the change that's in the agricultural designation that also affects the rural designation policies, it relates to areas where we have aggregate resource mapping and the interplay between that aggregate resource mapping and agricultural or rural lands. And simply put, the county official plan has two conflicting statements right now. So we're seeking to clarify those statements so they don't conflict any further. As I said, there's going to be no changes to the mapping, and proposed official plan amendment number 23 or OPA 23 would apply countywide anywhere where there's a rural designation in the Grey County official plan. I do also need to be clear that OPA 23, if approved at a later date by council, would not apply to existing planning applications that are already in process. But if approved, OPA 23 would apply on a go-forward basis. Part of the reasons for OPA 23 coming forward at this time is because staff had been waiting to see what the province approved in the Provincial Planning Statement 2024, which came into effect on October 20th of this year. So we have reviewed the PPS 2024 and tried to consider the new policy directions for rural lands and rural areas in the PPS 2024. Staff are still learning and working with ministry staff to make sure we understand those interpretations correctly. So in theory, there could still be further changes needed to the plan or to official plan number 23 as a result of that. With respect to some of the specifics, we already talked about the agricultural and aggregate policies. We're also looking to update the permitted use policies in the rural designation to clarify some of the existing terminology that's used in those permitted uses, and also to address rural special event venues. And so a rural special event venue could be something like a wedding barn, where somebody has converted a barn to host weddings or events, or perhaps a rural concert venue or event space in that regard. The policies also seek to clarify some of the development criteria as they apply to existing permitted uses, such as residential farm cooperatives, agriminiums, resource-based recreational uses, and recreation or tourist-based rural clusters. We're also looking to clarify the maximum density that can be permitted within those types of uses. There's clarification sought within the official plan to speak to the fact that agriminiums are permitted via plan of condominium, but that all other lot creation in the rural designation is to be done via consent in accordance with the rural lot density policies. And the need for this change stems from the fact that there's an existing policy in the official plan that speaks to lot creation being done via consent, save and except for those lots created in association with a resource-based recreational use, but it doesn't give that explicit permission that agriminiums are permitted via rural plan of condominium. We're also looking to clarify the development criteria for those resource-based recreational uses and any associated tourist uses or residential uses in that regard. There's a new subsection on rural institutional uses. So this might be where we have a rural school, cemetery, or place of worship in that regard. And we've included some criteria to be considered for such uses. And as I said, there's a new subsection on rural special event venues, such as wedding or concert spaces. These policies do not apply to one-off events such as a plowing match or an annual maple syrup festival or farm education event. They're more meant to apply to purpose-built event spaces, again, such as concert venues or wedding spaces in that regard. And finally, we've also proposed to update a number of definitions in the county plan as they pertain to some of the above noted permitted uses. With respect to some of the written comments that have been received to date, we heard from the Nottawasaga Conservation Authority, we've heard from Bell Canada, and from Enbridge Gas, all noted they have no objections with proposed OPA 23. We heard from Cobide Engineering, and they've noted that the county official plan should include a policy permitting modular home parks in the rural designation to take advantage of their planning, economic, and environmental benefits. Cobide has also noted that the policies on resource-based recreational uses are too restrictive as proposed, and that these uses should be permitted on a year-round basis and include the permission for permanent residences. Cobide has also submitted that resource-based recreational use residential lot creation should be permitted if the area can be adequately serviced. Cobide does not support a blanket ban on subdivisions and condominiums in the rural designated areas, and they believe they are permitted under the new provincial planning statement. And finally, Cobide has submitted that the policy, which requires 75% of land for recreational uses, would be impractical and expensive due to the study process and servicing requirements associated, and limiting the developable land to 25% could make such developments both unattractive and economically unfeasible. We also heard comments from MHBC Planning on behalf of one of their clients. They've noted that OPA 23 is restrictive and detracts from innovative forms of rural development, which may make such forms of development unfeasible. MHBC has also requested confirmation that this policy does not apply to active applications which are already in process. Finally, we also heard some comments from Municipality of West Grey staff, and staff at West Grey have suggested some changes to make some of the policies less vague, or to take away some of the subjective, in their opinion, some of the subjective elements of some of those clauses. They've recommended small-scale qualifiers be attached to some of the permitted uses. And they've recommended that the size of the use as it pertains to a rural special event venue should be considered based on the land area and not based on the number of people that may attend such events or the frequency of such events. And finally, similar to some of the warden's comments at the beginning of this meeting, we are still accepting comments on OPA 23. We would welcome any comments in writing to planning@grey.ca or via mail to the mailing address that was stated earlier. We don't have a final timeline for when a staff report would come back to County Council for their consideration, but we're anticipating it might be in the first quarter of 2025, subject to the feedback we hear here today and any additional comments that are received. Following Council's consideration of that staff report, perhaps in 2025, a decision would then follow, and staff would send out the notice of decision accordingly. Mr. Warden, that's all I have at this time, so I'll turn it back over to you to move forward with the meeting.
Very good. Thank you, Scott. Having now heard staff's presentation, are there any initial questions of clarification from the members of council present? Okay, I'm not hearing any at this point. Yeah, okay. Now we'll move into the public comment portion of the meeting. As a reminder, we are committed to conducting our meetings with mutual respect and decorum. Any offensive, insulting, or disrespectful language will not be tolerated. Any person who acts in such a manner will be expelled from the meeting. We have one speaker registered this morning concerning the item, or this afternoon rather, concerning the item on today's agenda. When it is your turn to speak, I'll call your name, and the clerk's staff will promote you from attendee to participant so you can access your microphone and camera. When you can turn on your microphone and camera, please do so and state your name for the public record before proceeding with your comments. And the first and only to this point person is Dana Kiefer. So I'm presuming the clerk's department will make their magic happen, and Dana will join us and submit her comments. There is Dana. Welcome. And the floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you, Warden and Milne. My name is Dana Kiefer. I'm a senior development planner with Cobide Engineering. Our address at Cobide is 517 10th Street, Hanover, Ontario. joining you live today from Toronto. I have left the Royal Agricultural Fair to come take this Zoom meeting. So we are here today committed to our clients at Combine. We did submit comments initially. Three things jumped out to on behalf of our clients with the proposed updates. And I think it's very fair to say we have had the new PPS for less than 3 weeks. And, we are still trying to understand what direction the province is trying to give us through the PPS and how those policies are going to be interpreted. So the first point was, as Scott mentioned, modular home parks are not contemplated at all in the county official plan at the moment. In our opinion, rural lands is actually a very good place for modular home parks, that they do provide a great development style that is needed for affordable housing, and that perhaps consideration should be given to including those as of right permitted use in on rural lands. The second point that we brought up was the blanket ban on subdivisions or condominiums outside of agriminiums. So I did maybe want to highlight for council and planning staff that the Ontario Professional Planners Institute legislative update on October 30th did actually have MMH provide direction on that, saying that policy 2.6 in the new PPS allows for residential development, including multi-lot projects on rural lands outside of settlement areas, provided that conditions support adequate sewage and water services, appropriate infrastructure is available, agricultural constraints are minimized, and the development adheres to minimum distance separation guidelines to mitigate conflicts between residential and agricultural uses. That's fairly clear direction, at least from MMH, that subdivisions and condominiums can be contemplated on rural lands. It's always the Grey County's prerogative to be more restrictive if they want to be, but it is a very restrictive approach to blanket ban them, in my opinion, because it does limit innovative developers who are willing to make investments in infrastructure that would service these lands adequately. And then finally, the 75% threshold is quite high. So we have worked on a number of campgrounds or resource-based recreation uses. A lot of the infrastructure investments that go into those are in the millions of dollars. So if you're doing a water taking permit or you're doing a communal servicing, is very expensive. So limiting that developable area to just 25% is very economically taxing to the people that are trying to develop these types of uses. And then the final point was the county staff report indicated that resource-based recreation uses are meant to be seasonal. So I did actually reach out directly to MMH on that. I included the email response from Senior Planner Tyler Shantz at MMH. So MMH did clarify that year-round and permanent residences can be considered under those policies as well, in their opinion of the policy interpretation. So I was curious on if the legislative updates that we've gotten recently had impacted, maybe because we are, planning is an ever-shifting landscape at this point. We are getting more direction. Had those crossed your desk as well through you, Warden, to Scott maybe, or had those impacted your decisions? Or
Good question. Thank you, Ms. Kiefer. Scott, do you want to respond?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank you, Dana, for all your comments and both choosing to submit them in writing in advance and your verbal comments here today. Yeah, as Dana's noted, that the PPS is still brand new, even though it feels like we've been talking about it for years. We're still learning, and so I am aware of that OPPI communication that she referenced, as well as the email from municipal affairs staff that was appended to COBIDE's comments. A number of county staff are attending a session with Municipal Affairs tomorrow to talk further about the provincial planning statement. And so we're keeping our ears and eyes open in this regard. And if there's further recommended changes needed to OPA 23 based on the learnings from either Municipal Affairs or others, we're certainly open to considering changes in that regard.
Thank you, Scott. Dana, do you have anything further?
Through you, Warden Milne, thank you for having me today, but that's everything for me.
All right. Thank you very much for taking the time to participate. We appreciate your input.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else on the meeting today that wishes to speak to the official plan amendment as proposed?
Through you,
Okay.
Mr. Warden.
Oh, wait. I see Terry, Councillor McKay has his hand up. Go ahead, Terry, please.
Yes, good afternoon. With these new rules coming out, a council meeting on Wednesday, we had a company that came in and presented their small houses. We were trying to get rid of the word tiny houses and small houses. And as long as they fit into the building code on ag land. And we're redoing our zoning bylaw right now. I don't think the county has seen it yet, but you will by the new year at the latest. Is there any stipulations in this new zoning that's coming out that would pertain to small houses?
Scott, do you want to respond to that, please?
Through you, Mr. Warden. There's nothing in OPA 23 that would change the county's policies with respect to housing stock in that regard. The county plan already generally defers to the building code, so as long as something still meets building code, it can be considered. There are new policies in the provincial planning statement that allow for greater use of what we call additional residential uses across the countryside. So the new PPS has clarified that those can be permitted in prime agricultural areas and in rural areas. But that's not necessarily changing through official plan amendment number 23 because the county official plan already permits it. The only thing as it pertains to those smaller houses that would potentially change under OPA 23 would be if somebody was looking at those associated with, say, an agriminium or associated with a resource-based recreational use. That's where proposed amendment 23 is trying to clarify those. And with respect to the township zoning bylaw, township staff have been excellent to work with as always, and they've had early discussions with our staff and they've looped us in. So yeah, great work there.
Very good. Thank you, Scott. Is that good, Terry? Very good. All right. I don't see any others from the public. Sarah, can you confirm that?
Mr. Warden.
Yep.
I do believe that we have Paula Hope on the line, and I might just promote her to see if she had any further comments.
Very good. Very good. Yep.
Thank you. I have no comments.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Paula. So that concludes the public comments. Last chance for councillors. Any clarification, questions? Okay. Scott, do you want to summarize the final or the next steps, rather, not final, next steps for the proposed amendment, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Warden. So as we mentioned, we are still accepting comments. So we would encourage those that might be tuning in or watching a recording of this video to submit their comments as soon as possible to planning@grey.ca. As per the discussion with Ms. Kiefer, we are still monitoring the interpretations that are coming out in the provincial planning statement. And depending on the comments we get and the interpretations we get on the provincial planning statement, there could be a need for further tweaks to amendment number 23 prior to a staff report coming back forward to County Council. As I mentioned, the early anticipated date for that staff report would be Q1 of 2025. but nothing's set in stone yet. So definitely encourage people to get their comments in and contact county staff if you have any questions, and we can certainly notify folks that have requested notice of decision once a decision has been issued. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Warden. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott. And as in all things planning, further tweaks are always anticipated. Okay, hearing nothing further, we have completed the agenda, so I will conclude the meeting by adjourning. Thank you all for participating, and enjoy the rest of the day, all.